Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment. From very high above all the puerile and pedantic forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Wednesday. It never fails, my friends, when I'm searching for something to talk to you about on episode day, an opportunity always lands in my lap. Such is the case for this morning's episode. There are a number of things that have come out in the news recently that bear a little bit of discussion, or a lot. Yesterday, the Cow Pie reported that Senator Cynthia Lummis was among the U.S. senators that were surveilled during the course of Jack Smith's so-called investigation that was completely illegitimate and inherently tyrannical. It just so happened that I had an interview with Representative Harriet Hageman scheduled for this morning, and that's exactly what we talked about. And a few other things. During the course of our discussion, Harriet broke what I think is a little bit of news. It wasn't just the United States senators that were surveilled by Jack Smith. There was at least one member of the House of Representatives that was spied on also. But really, my friends, the big question is, if they can spy on a sitting U.S. senator, who can't they spy on? Anyhow, it's a pretty interesting interview, and I'm just going to hit play for you. So, here you go. Once again, joining me on the phone is U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. Good morning, Harriet. How are you?
Good morning. I'm wonderful, David. How are you?
Everything's going good here. We've actually got a brief spat of good weather until the snow hits, so everything's good.
It's beautiful here.
Yeah, the last few days have been incredible. I mean, yesterday it was supposed to be kind of cool, but it turned out to be about 70. I was kind of bummed out that I put all the toys in the garage. So I'm glad you could join me this morning because there's a ton to talk about. And probably the place we ought to start is with the so-called government shutdown. How's that going?
Well, we should not be in this position. This should not have happened. It should be happening. I'm opposed to this. We put forth a clean CR, a clean continuing resolution, meaning the Republicans did not take this opportunity to hold the government hostage by demanding all kinds of add-ons or cuts or anything else. We literally put forward a proposal that we would continue to fund the government at the same levels that we have for the last year. The Biden spending, I mean, that's where we are. This is the Biden spending. That's the key CR, and it was the Democrats have rejected it, and they're holding the United States government, the federal government, hostage for an additional $500 million for funding for NPR and PBS, to provide health care for illegal aliens, and to continue a COVID-era program that they adopted 4 years ago to give subsidies to millionaires to buy Obamacare.
It's just absolutely incredible. Now, as I understand it, the House already passed the continuing resolution, and it's just everything's being held up in the Senate by Chuck Schumer. That's correct, right?
That is absolutely correct.
All right. Well, is there any path forward? I mean, is there anybody budging on the Democrat side? I know that there's a couple of Democrats that voted for the continuing resolution, but, I mean, are you making any headway?
Well, I hope that they are, and I'm going to talk with John and Cynthia today and talk about the strategy and where they are, but I believe that there is a pathway forward. For one thing, this is just absolutely ridiculous. I cannot believe that we are already this far into the year, into October, and the Democrats won't let us fund the government.
It's just amazing because, I mean, you can go back and watch video after video of Chuck Schumer, AOC, a lot of them, of course, AOC's in the House, but a lot of Democrats saying, oh, it's terrible if you shut the government down, and now they're doing exactly the opposite.
Well, I'm going to say something that I think is happening, David.
Please.
In part, they're holding the government. They're holding the government hostage on this, as I've indicated. But I also think that they're doing this intentionally because they do not want President Trump and the Republicans, a majority in the House and Senate, to be able to move forward with our agenda. So when you ask, is there a pathway forward, I think that the reason that they have put such an insane demand on the table, their demand is an additional $1.5 trillion in spending between now and November 21st. That's what they're demanding. We're $37 trillion in debt. We're funding the government at the same levels as under Joe Biden, and they're demanding an additional $1.5 trillion in spending. They know that we're not going to agree to that because it's absolutely absurd, and we're not going to do it to the American public. But I think that this is their effort to stop us from being able to move forward with what is a very, very popular agenda.
So, in other words, this is the last tool in the toolbox, and if they can't have their way, they're not going to let anybody do anything.
That's exactly right. It is my way or the highway, and they've chosen the highway, and their view is if they have to keep the government shut down to prevent President Trump from having the resources that he needs to deport illegal aliens, to interdict the drug traffickers out of Venezuela, all of the things. Harvard just released a poll in the last day that shows that the policies and the agenda of the Trump administration and the Republicans in Congress is highly, highly popular. What we're doing is what the people asked us to do. And the Democrats are looking around and saying, we have to find a way to stop this. And they've made the decision that they're going to just blow it up. That's who they are right now. That is who they are. If they can't have what they want and they can't move forward with their agenda, they're just going to blow it up. That they are incredibly dangerous right now in terms of what they're trying to do to this country.
Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest temper tantrum I think anybody's ever seen. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, and this came out yesterday or the day before, but that a number of U.S. senators had been surveilled by Jack Smith's investigation, including Senator Lummis. And I was going to ask you if you could just comment on that. I mean, this is a huge story.
It's a huge story. It's a violation of their Fourth Amendment rights. It's most likely a violation of their First Amendment rights. I actually have a bill. I'm going to do a segue here, and then I'll come back to it. I have a bill called the First Amendment Accountability Act that I want to push through. And what it would do is it would allow anybody whose First Amendment rights have been violated by a federal actor, they can sue that person for damages and injunction and get their attorney's fees. And I think that we need to, this is the exact example. If my bill was in place right now, every one of these senators would be able to sue Jack Smith and his minions and everybody involved in this for damages for what they've done. And I'm going to try to push forward with that because I think this demonstrates how incredibly dangerous, again, the Democrats have become. I am horrified by this. I cannot believe it. But what I also can't figure out is why they picked these 11 people. And why I say that is that tells me that they found this out because they found an email. There's an email that has been disclosed that demonstrates that they were surveilling these lawmakers. But because they seem to be so random and there wasn't anything in particular that tied them together, I wonder if they were surveilling everybody. This just happened to describe those. I'm wondering if there's going to be evidence that there were other members of the House and the Senate that they were surveilling, that it's not just limited to these folks.
Were there members of the House that they were surveilling as well?
One.
There was one. Okay.
The guy from Pennsylvania. There was a Representative Kelly from Pennsylvania. And I don't have any idea why in the world they would be surveilling him. But again, I look at these names, and number one, I'm furious. I'm furious for Cynthia, and I'm furious for everybody else. Nobody who goes into public service should be subject to this kind of surveillance, this kind of abuse, this kind of violation of our constitutional rights. Nobody should be subject to this. But then I look at the broader picture and I think this isn't the end of this story because this doesn't make sense yet. We got to keep pulling on those threads.
We'll get back to the program in just a second. But first, a completely outrageous exposition of pure capitalism. Cowboy State Politics is brought to you by Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. Are you one of those people that thought you were moving to Wyoming, only to find out that you had moved your entire family to the only Democrat stronghold in the cowboy state? First, I'm sorry about your luck on that one. Perhaps we in Wyoming should do a few more public service announcements to alert would-be legal immigrants to our state to avoid the northwest corner of Wyoming. I don't know about that one. There's something to be said for catching them where you can. Anyway, I digress. If you really do want to move to Wyoming, the real Wyoming, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. And that agent is Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She sold everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches, everywhere from the Bighorns all the way over to the Tetons. Give her a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. 307-699-3519. Today's breaking news episode is also brought to you by Morton Buildings. Yeah, I know, it's supposed to be 70 today, but it won't be for long, and all of your stuff is out in the yard getting ready to be snowed on. You could have prevented that unfortunate circumstance simply by calling Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. They are the experts in metal building construction. They'll build you anything from a garage all the way up to a big giant warehouse for your business. Just give them a call. Tell them what your problems are. That your boat is about to be living in a snowbank and you don't want to have to replace the upholstery. Just give them a call. Do it today. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. One more time, 307-674-2532. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the program. That way you'll be notified every single time there's a brand new episode of Cowboy State Politics. To do that, go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. And now, back to the breaking news interview with U.S. Representative Harriet Hageman. Yeah, and that was one of the questions that I had is, okay, so these senators and a representative appear to be just kind of disconnected. I don't know that Senator Lummis was all that outspoken for anything that was going on with President Trump before the election. I mean, she was in favor of him, but I don't think that I can't think of a single time where she was outspoken on any of it.
That's why I think that there has to be more to this story. Because this is that they were listed, they were identified in an email demonstrating that they had been under surveillance. But again, I want to find out what the connection is among them, and if there isn't one, then was everybody being surveilled? This just happens to be the one email that identified these guys. I don't know if that's the case or not, but that's why I say we need to do much more investigation, and every one of these people needs to be held accountable. We keep saying that. My frustration is that we've got courts that are not holding them accountable. Klein Smith, he's the guy that falsified the documents related to the Russia collusion hoax. All he got was a slap on the hand, and he's back practicing law again, and he's nothing but a corruptocrat. He should have been disbarred, but he wasn't, and that's the same thing with this Jack Smith stuff. Why in the world were they surveilling? Why in the world did they identify these people for hacking their phones and perhaps their computers?
If that was going to be my next question, is do you know how far this surveillance goes? I mean, were they actually listening in, or was it the location and call data? Do you have any idea on that?
Again, I don't think that we have gotten to the bottom of this yet. I think that those are the kinds of questions that need to be asked. We do know that they were getting their location data, they were pulling their location data, and they were pulling their call data. We know that for sure. But again, why would you be pulling location data? Why are you surveilling them? Are you following them? Did they basically put a tracker on these folks and have somebody in the FBI following them wherever they went? How creepy is that? How scary is that we've got a government with that kind of power and with no guardrails?
Well, yeah.
We had a government, we had a rogue government in place. They didn't care what the mores required. They didn't care about constitutional rights and limitations on government. They were willing to do whatever it took to do whatever they were trying to do. And this is an example of that.
And it's probably an obvious question, but where are the warrants?
That's the question. And under what basis would they have been able to go in front of a judge and say, we think that we need to be following Senator Cynthia Lummis? We know they didn't have the warrants because no court would have granted one. No court would. What? We don't like her? We think that she supports Donald Trump? She's from Wyoming? I mean, what would be the basis for a warrant? What kind of a crime do they believe that she committed?
Well, and that's exactly the point. I mean, that group of people, I can't even point to one even plausibly suspect thing that I mean any of them have said or done, unless we're all just completely oblivious to everything. But I don't see that there's anything that would warrant that.
That's just exactly right, and that's why they wouldn't have been able to get a warrant. They had to use the Steele dossier to get a warrant on Carter Page. And at the time that they used it 5 different times to get warrants so that they could surveil him. And ultimately what they were surveilling was the Trump campaign in 2016. They never even went in to get the warrant until October of 2016. But by August of 2016, on August 3rd, there had been a meeting at the White House with Obama and Brennan, Biden, Comey, that whole team. They had sat down and they went through the Christopher Steele dossier, and they knew at that time that it was a political hit job, that it had no basis in fact, that it was completely invalid, that they were unable to confirm even one thing that Christopher Steele had identified. They knew that it was false. They knew that it was all lies. They knew that it was a smear campaign, and yet 2 months later they were using it to get warrants against Carter Page. That's how corrupt these people are.
I couldn't agree more. And I was just thinking while you were talking that if they were surveilling Senator Lummis, no offense intended to the senator, but in many cases, you're far more dangerous than she is. I mean, everything that you've done in committees, you would think that if anybody was a threat to their agenda, you would be on the list as well.
Well, who did I run against?
Exactly. That's my point.
That would be the bigger issue for me, is who I ran against. And this was ostensibly related to some of the January 6th stuff. Well, who was right in the middle of the January 6th stuff? It was Liz Cheney.
Yes, ma'am.
So here we are. I was running against her. I ran against her. I defeated her. And that's what's got me scared. Not that there's anything out there, but the fact is, it's nobody's business what's in my phone. It's nobody's business where I've been. It's nobody's business who I may have been talking to, unless I've committed a crime or you suspect me and have a legitimate reason for surveilling me and for accessing my electronic information, and you go to court to get a search warrant under the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution, then there's no reason whatsoever other than for political purposes. And that's when that's where my frustration lies when I hear Democrats and their mouthpieces talk about the Republicans or Trump being a threat to democracy. First of all, we're not a democracy, and they're really stupid when they say that. But second of all, this is the threat to democracy. This is the threat to our Republican form of government. This is a threat to the rule of law. When you can just randomly identify politicians and say, we're going to start surveilling them. This is third world banana republic type of stuff. And it not only has to stop, but we need to hold these people accountable. And again, that's why I want my First Amendment Accountability Act passed.
Absolutely. Well, and I think the real scary question for just about everybody is, if they can do this to a U.S. senator, who can't they do it to? And
the question is, who aren't they doing it to? You know, all of this stuff with January 6th, all of the stuff that Jack Smith was investigating, the documents, we all know, and we knew at the time, and the kind of the radical press, the CNNs of the world, MSNBCs, your CBS, ABCs, all of those organizations were trying to convince us that what happened on January 6th was the worst thing in the entire history of the world and the greatest threat to our form of government ever. It was a 4-hour incident that could have been quelled if they'd actually done done what President Trump asked them to do, which was to bring in the National Guard. But setting that aside, they then used that and parlayed that into this mass surveillance program of sitting politicians. Then you add in the fact that we know that there were a minimum of 274 or 75 FBI agents undercover on January 6th. After I found out that number, I asked somebody, I said, well, how many people were arrested or involved on the January 6th thing at the Capitol? And I was told it was around 2,000. I don't know the exact number, but they said, well, it was around 2,000. And I said, are you telling me that over 10% of the people in that crowd, 1 out of every 10 person was an undercover FBI agent? Is that what you're telling? Is that what they have just admitted?
Yeah.
And then you add in the other types of assets that they had and the provocateurs, and I'm sure that you had Antifa there acting as though they were conservative Republicans. I mean, you start adding this in, and what you realize is that the vast majority of what happened on January 6th had nothing to do with what they've been trying to smear us with over all of these last several years. Then you've got Jack Smith out there surveilling U.S. senators and using the power of the government to access their private records. And it's like, wait a minute, did we really stop a coup? It feels like a coup. We were able to prevent a coup from happening, but not by very much.
Yes. I mean, you are absolutely correct. Now, I've only got about 2 minutes left, but I have one more question for you. And this one's quite a bit different than what we've been talking about. But recently, I interviewed two of the Democrats, Provenza and Mike Yen, on my program. And the last question I asked them is, with everything that's going on, people, Charlie Kirk being assassinated, a lot of the political violence we've seen in America, the Democrat Party in Wyoming flashing swastikas around. My question to them was, how do we turn down the volume?
Stop using names that you know are not only inaccurate, but are dog whistles to people who would do something terrible. I'm not a Nazi. I am not a fascist. I am not someone who's trying to destroy our republic. I am someone who does read our Constitution. I'm actually quite a scholar in our Constitution. I understand what our forefathers did and the importance of preserving it. I am the names that are being used to do a broad, to paint us as evil, as you've got U.S. senators, Democrats coming out and saying, we have to do whatever it takes to stop the Republicans. You say things like that. You've got Gavin Newsom saying that the kinds of rhetoric that he uses, they are putting targets on our back. I don't say those things about Democrats. I would never go to a town hall and treat people the way that they treated me in Laramie, the way they treated me in Grable, the way that they treated me in Rock Springs. I would never, ever do that to a Democrat. I would never do that to somebody else. We need to tone down the rhetoric. We need to stop this nonsense. But you've got mentally ill people out there, and I'm not excusing their behavior by saying they're mentally ill. But when you start calling us Nazis and fascists and things like that, you are painting a target on our backs, and it needs to stop.
I couldn't agree more. Well, Harriet, I really appreciate your time this morning. Unfortunately, I've got to cut things short. I've got a live program to do in a couple of minutes. But we'll talk soon. Thank you very much for coming on the program, and let me know what else happens.
Thanks, David. Talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.
A little bit of breaking news on a Wednesday on Cowboy State Politics. Well, that'll about do it for today's installment of the program. Have a good rest of your week, and we'll talk again on Saturday. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio, I'm David Iverson, and this is the one and only Cowboy State Politics.